Hello and good morning. I'm Michael Noble, the Executive Director at Fresh Energy, and I couldn't be more excited to welcome you to our 6th annual benefit breakfast. We're honored that so many of you could join us today. I know that we were all hoping to gather in person this year, but we're still dealing with these unprecedented times in so many ways. We're seeing the effects and even experiencing the climate crisis all around us. Massive wildfires, floods, drought, unhealthy air quality, COVID, and more. With all these challenges and the urgency evident in our world today, there's one thing you can always count on: Fresh Energy's determination to build a carbon neutral economy that is just, prosperous, and resilient. A clean energy future that benefits everyone. I'm positive we're not alone in knowing how important this work is. Seeing the support of so many friends, including our generous event sponsors, our table captains, is incredibly inspiring. Together, we're shaping the course of history using public policy to tackle climate change and ensure that we have a clean and healthy planet for the kids growing up today and for future generations. I'd like to introduce a friend of mine and a true ally of Fresh Energy who's also passionate about the health of our climate and the importance of using our resources and our generosity to make a positive impact in the world. Ted Kontag is a founding partner of Parable Wealth Partners, our title sponsor. Ted is here with me to welcome you all this morning. Parable Wealth is a little different than most financial planning firms. Well, they certainly help you figure out all the money stuff, but they also work to align your investments with your values and your goals. This is especially true when it comes to investing with the environment in mind. Welcome, Ted.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks.
Thanks. I'm here to represent Parable Wealth Partners as the title sponsor because now is the time for bold action on climate change. And by being here today, you too understand the urgency. Through Fresh Energy, we know that we need 3 big things to happen in order to solve our climate crisis. We need really great technology, really great public policy, and we need money. Not just the money that Michael and his team will be asking for later, that's good too, but we need the investment dollars in the world to be chasing after the companies that are part of the solution, not the ones that are part of the problem. At Parable Wealth, we manage our clients' dollars with an eye toward the impact that companies have on the environment and society as a whole. We believe that this will not only lead to great investment opportunities, but also to long-lasting and sustainable change. Our financial planning team works with people who are driven by purpose, people who want to make a difference. Parable Wealth is sponsoring today's event, but my wife and I also support Fresh Energy personally. We love their optimism and their integrity. They do what they say they're going to do, and they're making a real difference. That's why I'm grateful to be here today and grateful for Fresh Energy. Welcome again to all of you. Thank you for being here to support Fresh Energy's mission, vision, and actions, which are propelling us toward a clean energy future. Fresh Energy is truly part of the solution.
Thank you again, Ted, for leading by example in our community. You, your family, your company are making tangible changes toward a better energy future. This morning, you'll be hearing about some game-changing progress that Fresh Energy accomplished this year, and we truly could not have done it without your support, the support of each one of you. By being with us today, you are taking a stand and you're helping to change the world. Thank you. Now, don't forget to refer back to the program and the event packet that was mailed to you, or maybe it was emailed to you, with more information about what you might expect this morning and more information about Fresh Energy that you can find on the Fresh Energy website. Now, I would like to welcome your MC for this morning, a rising star you might recognize from our program last year, Janice Watts. Janice is our Director of Culture and Partnerships in the Energy Access and Equity Program at Fresh Energy. Welcome, Janice Watts.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Ted. I'm Janice Watts, and I'm excited to be hosting the Benefit Breakfast for a second time. As Michael mentioned, this event would not be possible without the support from business partners and individuals who generously sponsored today's program and donated to the match pool. Thank you to our title sponsor, Parable Wealth Partners, our innovation and technology sponsors, Mortensen and Rar Corporation.
Thank you to our visionary partner sponsors, Atomic Data, District Energy St. Paul, Evergreen Energy, Houlihan Lokey, IPS Solar, and Xcel Energy, and to all of our Clean Energy Champion and Friends of the Future sponsors.
And thanks to our generous match pool sponsors, all gifts this morning of $250 or more will be doubled. I'd also like to recognize the many table captains who worked so hard to bring us all together this morning. You are instrumental in making this event a success. And thank you to our board member and event chair, Eric Posse, for all of your time and effort and leadership. He really went above and beyond this year, and I'll be honored to invite him to the stage a little later. Lastly, I really want to acknowledge all the amazing organizational allies and partners who work alongside us all year long, our incredible board of directors, and of course, my phenomenal colleagues, the team at Fresh Energy. This morning, I'm coming to you from my hometown of St. Paul, Minnesota, also where Fresh Energy is based. And I think it's important to take this time to give a land acknowledgement. This is the land of the Dakota people. Everywhere we are on Indigenous land. And I encourage you to learn what land you're on. At the heart of why we're gathered here this morning is the belief that together we can create a brighter future and a healthier climate. Minnesota and our country is in the midst of a reckoning on racial justice and climate justice, and the energy transformation is underway. More renewables than ever are coming online each year. Coal plants are closing their doors, plans for gas power plants are being scrapped, and consumers are demanding electric vehicles, cooktops, and heat pumps. But this transformation will not succeed if it's at the expense of our most vulnerable communities. Fresh Energy is working hard to electrify the economy and ensure that the energy transition is both equitable and just. The energy sector and organizations like Fresh Energy working in it have an obligation to learn from past transitions when policy choices have excluded, harmed, and marginalized communities. For example, our buildings where we live and work are a major part of the energy transition. That means we will need to make major energy efficiency retrofits, use electricity instead of gas, and above all, prioritize affordability over the long term. So maybe when you first think of Fresh Energy, your mind goes to our incredible work to transform the electricity grid, or our work to eliminate our dependency on fossil fuels in transportation. But today's program is focused on decarbonizing buildings. We have the know-how, and Fresh Energy is working to make super efficient, gas-free, healthy, and affordable buildings the new normal. And the world is taking notice of all of our shared accomplishments. Fresh Energy's Science Policy Director, J. Drake Hamilton, has been called upon to speak about Minnesota's clean energy innovation and highlight the policy work of Fresh Energy at next month's International United Nations Climate Change Conference. The world has been waiting for the United States to step up. Now is the time, and Fresh Energy is part of the solution. Speaking of making waves outside of Minnesota, we have an important guest here to highlight the ambitious new clean electricity program that is the bedrock of President Biden's climate plan. That will bring our nation to 80% carbon-free electricity by the end of the decade. Senator Tina Smith. As the chief author of this bill, we are thrilled to talk to her today about this exciting new chapter in the clean energy story. So please join me in welcoming Senator Tina Smith, interviewed by our very own Michael Noble.
Hello, Senator Smith. We're so glad to have you this morning here for our sixth annual benefit breakfast. You know, I just want to acknowledge, first of all, that when a United States senator goes to Washington, they have to pick a very, very few things that they deeply dive and deeply get expert on, and then they have to vote on everything. And everybody here at Fresh Energy and everybody in the room today and or online in the room is so appreciative that you chose climate and energy to be one of the very few things that you are moving America on and gaining great stature and influence in the United States Senate. It is so meaningful to everyone in Minnesota that you took all the experience you had before in energy and you took it to Washington on our behalf. I'm very, very appreciative of that.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. That's so kind of you to say. And you and I know that we've been working together in various roles that I've had with you and all of your amazing team at Fresh Energy for a really long time. So to be able to be in Washington right now, where we have, I believe, a unique moment to make real important progress on climate action is very exciting. And I carry with me all of the lessons I learned from you and Fresh Energy as I do this work.
Mm-hmm. So can you just briefly explain for the audience, almost everybody knows, but why is the Tina Smith Clean Electricity Policy Bill, everyone agrees that this is the heart and soul of the Biden climate agenda? Just briefly explain why that is.
Well, as I just said a minute ago, we have a moment to make significant movement on climate action to get our country to meet President Biden's goals of a 50% reduction in emissions by 2030. And the cornerstone of that effort is the Clean Electricity Plan, which is what I've been working on really for several years. And it was also the cornerstone of President Biden's campaign promises and pledges about moving our country forward on clean energy. And what it does is it says we are going to, in the power generating sector, move to 80% clean power sources by 2030. And it does this in a way that will hold utility rates stable for households and for businesses while we add clean every year in order to reach that goal. It is practical, it is progressive, and it gets us the carbon reductions and the emissions reductions that we need.
So Senator, those of us who've been watching this closely for 20 years or 30 years, we've had a lot of disappointments in Congress and presidents of both political parties. Can you really explain, in your view, why this opportunity right now might very well be humankind's last best chance for really meaningful action on climate, and while failure is just really not an option?
Well, failure is absolutely not an option. I think a lot of things have shifted pretty dramatically over the last several years. First of all, the clear and imminent danger of climate change is not an abstract idea that we're going to be seeing happening to us in the future. It's happening to us right now. We saw it here in Minnesota this summer with this terrible drought, which has had such deep impacts on Minnesota, the fires in the Boundary Waters, and of course the life-taking climate catastrophes that we've seen all over this country this summer. So it feels real and urgent to people. I often say to my colleagues in Washington that you don't need to explain to Minnesotans that climate change is real, that it's caused by human activity, and that we need to take bold action to address it. When I'm talking to farmers with their flooded fields, or loggers in northern Minnesota that are looking at a dramatically shifting ecosystem for Minnesota forests. So there's a real urgency there. But that's not the only thing that's changed. The other thing that has happened is that there is a grassroots movement to really force change. And I think you and I both know that most transformational change doesn't come from the top down, it comes from the bottom up. And we are really seeing that kind of energy to accomplish this transformation that I don't think we saw several years ago. And I'll be honest, working in Washington, D.C. every day, that the powers for the status quo, the big fossil fuel companies, are powerful. And they have often tried so hard to stifle this kind of change. But there is a little bit of weakening in that, not so much amongst the fossil fuel companies very much, but amongst other big companies and big organizations in the country that are saying, no, our customers want clean energy. Our employees want to work for companies that are advancing clean energy, and our shareholders want this. So the dynamic has really shifted in terms of the politics of it. And I think this is one of the reasons why the Clean Electricity Plan that I'm working on and President Biden's broad agenda for climate change are dramatically popular around the country. This is not something that we have to persuade people is a good idea. They're more saying, like, let's get going on this. Let's get this done.
So Senator, if the electricity industry and the power sector is just a modest fraction of overall American carbon emissions. Why is this the bedrock of the policy we need on climate? Why is this your plan, the foundational bedrock cornerstone, the main thing in the Biden climate plan? Why is electric power sector so important?
Well, it's a great question because it gets at the kind of multiplier effect of cleaning up our power sector. So right now, the power sector contributes a little less than 30% of the carbon emissions in our atmosphere. And right now, the power sector is at about 40% clean nationally across the whole country, and we want it to get to 80%. So that in and of itself is still a significant reduction in carbon emissions. But what happens when you electrify other parts of our economy, you start to see this multiplier effect. President Biden has put a huge emphasis on electric vehicles, from the cars and trucks that you and I drive around to electric buses and other kinds of bigger transportation vehicles that use fossil fuel power. That contributes a lot to emission reductions, because if they're getting their power for that electric vehicle from clean power and not from a coal plant, that multiplies the impact. And then the effort that we have also in the Build Back Better budget to electrify home and business heating and cooling, and to enhance energy efficiency, then also goes to the major impacts of climate, of heating and cooling all those buildings, and the kind of the industrial, the residential industrial sector, commercial sector of real estate. So those things all add up. Now, they don't all get us 100% to the net zero emissions by 2035 that the president is focusing on, but they get us a long way there, and that's why it has so much power.
So that is actually the main subject of our event today, is electrifying everything we can. And today our main topic with Donnel Baird from BlocPower is about electrifying buildings, starting with affordable housing and the medium-sized buildings in America. So we want to electrify transportation, buildings, and the heavy industry to the degree that we can. So my next question, Senator, is climate hawk and Washington Governor Jay Inslee kind of boldly said that the message now is that Congress shouldn't come home without both of these big bills on the president's desk. Are you drawing those kind of lines in the sand that we absolutely have to have an 80 to 90% cut in the electric power sector emission in order for the president to have your vote on both bills?
Well, I just stood with some of my colleagues and some incredible young activists to say again that it is essential, it is necessary that these bills that we're working on in Washington take strong climate action. And that is not a posture of refusing to compromise. That is a posture of saying now is the moment. There is great urgency in this moment, and we can't let this moment waste. And it's also about reminding people that when we take bold action on climate, then that puts the United States at the forefront of what will be over $1 trillion expansion and growth in the clean energy sector over the next 10 years. And we need to be at the forefront of that, not following what China and countries in the European Union are doing, because that's going to mean millions of jobs here in the United States. It's going to mean great jobs. It's going to mean moving us more towards the justice and the equity that we want to see in our economy. So my posture in Washington right now is one of let's find a path, let's work it out. And I believe that we are going to be able to do that. This is something that so many of us believe is absolutely essential to take.
Again, Senator Tina Smith, the United States Senator from Minnesota, we are deeply, deeply appreciative for your work on behalf of all of us and for being part of our 2021 benefit breakfast. Thank you, Senator Smith.
Thank you, Fresh Energy.
Thanks again to Senator Smith for joining us to talk about this historic clean energy momentum. Minnesota is so lucky to have a champion like you taking urgent action on the climate crisis and affirm how important it is to act with ambition. We are so grateful for your leadership and commitment to Minnesota. Now you say, how does this ambition play out at Fresh Energy in our everyday work? A few members of our staff made this video to show you how we are driving measurable progress on climate and energy in our electric grid, in our transportation systems, and in our buildings and our communities. And as you watch this, please remember, donors like you make Fresh Energy's important progress possible. Immediately following the video, I'm pleased to welcome Event Chair and Fresh Energy Board Member Eric Posse to the stage.
When Fresh Energy was founded 3 decades ago, we recognized the urgent need to transition to a clean energy economy. Today, it's impossible to miss the fact that we are in a climate crisis. We have never seen the urgency that we see today. Fresh Energy is a Minnesota-based nonprofit shaping the laws and the markets that will move us to a future that is equitable and carbon-free. The East and West Coasts are moving fast, but when we spur progress in Minnesota and the Midwest, we move the needle, nationally and globally. We're not giving up, and neither should you.
Not so long ago, coal plants like the one behind me were the top source of electricity in Minnesota and the top source of carbon emissions from electricity. Thanks to our work and the work of partner organizations, Minnesota's 6 remaining coal plants are scheduled to close in the coming years, and in the meantime, are running much less often. Wind and solar power are growing, and we are now working to secure retirement dates for coal plants in neighboring states, and to shift utility investments from fossil gas power plants to clean energy and storage. We know how to move to zero carbon electricity to power our economy. Now, we need to finish the job.
Moving off of oil and gas for our transportation is essential to a carbon-free future. With our partners, Fresh Energy waged a multi-year battle against special interests, and Minnesota is now officially America's 15th clean car state. As a result, there will be more electric cars available here and less pollution from tailpipe emissions. But we can't stop now. Fresh Energy is at the forefront of advancing progressive policies that make clean electric transportation easier and more affordable for all Minnesotans.
But it's not just vehicles. Buildings are the fastest growing source of carbon emissions in Minnesota because we're burning more fossil gas. The natural gas system impacts both the planet and our health. Powerful greenhouse gases escape into the atmosphere when we extract fossil gas from the ground and then transport it across the country and into our homes and businesses. And when we burn that gas inside, it releases more carbon, plus air pollution that's dangerous to human health. Fresh Energy's gas decarbonization program is working to break the pattern of investment that's locked us into dependence on fossil gas. Through energy efficiency and new electric technology, we can get the gas out of our buildings, creating jobs and making our communities healthier.
All around us, the energy transition is underway, and it's a huge change for society at a time when we're already struggling with major inequities. It's our job to make sure the transition is equitable and just. Fresh Energy's Energy Access and Equity team is working to reduce the energy burden on under-resourced households and make sure that affordable housing is truly affordable because it's inexpensive to heat and cool. Together, we co-create our energy future with communities that will be affected most, all while ensuring that Minnesotans have access to family-supporting, clean energy jobs.
Climate change is the most urgent issue of our lifetime. Period. Our way of changing the world at Fresh Energy is through equitable energy policy that reduces carbon emissions. It's plain and simple. When I was young, maybe I was mostly worried about polar bears. But now I know the effects of climate change are so much bigger. At Fresh Energy, one of the reasons we're passionate about this work is because we care about the future of humanity. And we know that the people with the least will suffer the effects of climate change the most. Everyone alive today has a reason to be in this fight. What's yours?
All right, we have one more question for you before you go.
Oh,
Why are you so passionate about this type of work?
oh wow. Ooh,
Oh, this is a surprise question. You warned me that there was a surprise question.
How come you didn't prep me for that?
That's a good question.
it sounds like a simple question, but it's actually very emotional.
I'm passionate about this work because I see injustices all around me.
I'm worried about what it means for our economy.
Working on clean energy and climate issues can be really challenging.
the next 5 to 10 years are the most consequential time in all of human history.
My purpose and my calling in life is to fight inequities.
Proud to be part of the Fresh Energy team working to advance solutions to these unprecedented challenges.
To work on trying to solve, these really complex problems and doing it in an inclusive and protective way for consumers and the environment.
It's because we imagine a world that's better and imagine a world that our children and their grandchildren and their grandchildren can enjoy the way that we did.
We know how to do this, and the challenge isn't anymore figuring out what needs to be done. It's developing the political will and the savvy to actually do the work.
When you work at a place like Fresh Energy, where all of your colleagues are amazing and smart, it's pretty easy to stay optimistic.
Collaboration gives me hope. My team gives me hope. Fighting with people alongside me definitely gives me hope.
Aloha, everybody. We're here this morning to celebrate and support the incredibly important work of Fresh Energy, leading the energy transition to positively affect the climate and our communities. My name is Eric Posse, and my climate story revolves around my family. My dad immigrated to Hawaii in the early 1980s from a place called Nuku'alofa in the island nation of Tonga. I was fortunate enough to visit his former home in Tonga 6 years ago, and I can say that it is one of the purest and untouched places I've ever been to. Raw, natural beauty at its finest. While there, I met cousins, uncles, aunts, and family, mostly for the first time. One of the biggest eye-openers for me was that much of this island, where generations of my family had called home, is less than 9 feet above sea level. What will happen as rising waters threaten their way of life? A threat that is not of their making, but is now their burden. My father passed away from heart disease several years later, but not before meeting his first grandchild and my daughter, Kate. Climate change not only affects our future, but everything that has come before us. In order to honor the legacy of our ancestors and everything they sacrificed to make things better for our families, we must do whatever we can to protect the planet and our sacred places. Needless to say, I'm inspired every day to fight for a better future, and that's manifested in the work I do at IPS Solar. I've worked in the solar industry for almost 15 years, and in that time, I've grown to know Fresh Energy very well. In 2013, I collaborated with Fresh Energy and a coalition of other organizations to support passage of the Solar Jobs Act, and with it, the nation's largest and most consequential community solar program. In 2018, IPS worked with Fresh Energy to bring apiaries to some of our solar sites where we planted pollinator-friendly vegetation. We've benefited immensely from Fresh Energy's work over the years, and they are a vital part of the clean energy ecosystem. When the opportunity came to serve on Fresh Energy's board in 2019, I jumped at the chance. The next and most important phase of our collective work is related to equity and environmental justice, a subject Fresh Energy has been leading on for many years. I'm so proud of this team and their work in this space. We cannot leave anyone behind. We have the opportunity to address long-standing inequities by focusing on marginalized communities first. It's absolutely the right thing to do and central to Fresh Energy's core mission. So now I get the opportunity to invite you to be a part of that mission. I get to offer you the opportunity to invest in Fresh Energy's work. With the words from Senator Smith this morning, it is clear that now is our moment for transformational progress. And we must meet that moment with an outsized effort to positively influence the trajectory of our future. We're asking for a suggested donation of $125, but every single dollar makes a difference. If you have the capacity, please consider a larger gift. It's important to note that a generous pool of donors has agreed to match any donation of $250 or more. You can become a Power Circle donor by making a gift of $1,000 or even $5,000. It will help accelerate the shared goals we all have for a healthier and more equitable future. Most of all, mahalo for your time today, and thank you for being a part of Fresh Energy.
Thank you so much, Eric. We're grateful for your hard work as a board member and the event chair for the benefit breakfast this year, and for taking the time to rally this crowd in support of Fresh Energy. And thanks to all of you who took the time to make a donation just now. I'm incredibly pleased and proud to introduce our featured speaker today, Donnel Baird. Danelle is the CEO of Brooklyn-based BlocPower, and he is proving that businesses can tackle the carbon pollution challenge while making a profit and creating family-supporting jobs. Welcome, Danelle Baird.
Hello, everyone. My name is Donnel Baird, and I'm the CEO of BlocPower. And we're here today to talk about turning buildings into Teslas. Odd, I know, but we're really excited about the possibilities of electrifying buildings, moving them 100% off of fossil fuels, taking out the oil, taking out the gas, replacing the heating, the cooling, the hot water system, and of course, figuring out how to provide clean energy through the electricity grid. So we want to turn a building into a Tesla. The way we think about that is there's 5 million medium-sized buildings across America. There's 119, 120 million single-family homes, and another 500,000 skyscrapers. And there's some factories and stuff in there. The 5 million buildings, the medium-sized buildings, apartment complexes, churches, synagogues, mosques, our schools all across the country, small businesses. These 5 million buildings waste $100 billion per year on fossil fuel energy. That's energy that they pay for, but waste. They don't use it. There's other energy that they pay for and do use. So significant amount of waste. These buildings also spread COVID-19. If you think of a classroom or an apartment building, spreading COVID from room to room through their inefficient ventilation and filtration systems. And these 5 million buildings emit 7% of US greenhouse gas emissions. Overall, we know real estate across the country is responsible for about 30 to 35% of greenhouse gas emissions, depending on who's doing the math. But the 5 million medium-sized buildings emit about 7 to 8%. So the cost of not upgrading and addressing these buildings and moving them off of fossil fuels, that cost is massive. We know that there's over 150 American cities that have passed laws mandating that they want to shift their cities to 100% renewable energy, whether by 2030, 2040, 2050, they've passed laws. We know that it's going to cost a little over $1 trillion to pay the upfront cost for labor and green energy equipment to electrify these 5 million buildings. It's cost several trillion more to electrify all of the buildings in America. So it's a pretty expensive proposition, but a necessary one. We think you can finance it with some of that $100 billion a year of wasted energy payments that are being made by these buildings, but we'll return to that later. So our goal at BlocPower, we're a climate tech startup, a public benefits corporation, and we want to turn 5 million buildings, these medium-sized buildings, we want to turn them into Teslas. We want them to be all electric. We want them to be connected to the internet with cutting-edge software, no fossil fuels. So we think there's 4 crises in our analyses that are occurring in America right now. The first is, obviously, there's a public health crisis. There's an unemployment crisis. There's the ongoing climate crisis. And then there's the civil rights and racial justice crisis and the wealth inequality crisis about inequality in America. And so we we think there's an opportunity if we can get focused and organized to use building electrification to respond to all four crises simultaneously and help President Biden build back better. So the challenge that we're running into in our industry right now that's preventing us from doing all of this and electrifying all of these buildings and reaping all of the benefits, the challenge is that electrification is too costly, too time consuming, too manual. There's not enough data. There's not enough software. There's not enough trusted contractors. Utilities don't really want to do it. And governments, they want to do it, but they don't have the data, nor do they have clear plans. And so it's kind of a big mess. So what we've done at BlocPower is we focused on building a unified software platform to help analyze, finance, and upgrade these millions and millions of buildings across America and solve the problems that face the green buildings industry. So we're going to analyze, finance, and upgrade green infrastructure, green equipment in millions and millions of buildings across America using a mix of analytics, machine learning, well-trained and certified green construction installation firms, preferably minority, woman, veteran-owned businesses that often are undercapitalized. We want to get them certified so they can participate and help lead the green economy, and partnering with great global suppliers like Daycon or Mitsubishi so that we can leverage their awesome equipment and scale. So we think that by financing and managing these projects, we can generate revenue. All of us, not just BlocPower, but local nonprofits, local small businesses throughout the country, particularly in the context of bipartisan infrastructure or a reconciliation bill from the budget. We think there's opportunities to make massive investments in training, workforce development, in creating a new industry to electrify our buildings and turn buildings into Teslas.
Thank you, Danelle. You have really such an amazing story, and at Fresh Energy, we are all in on your vision for buildings that run on clean electricity, and we're really, really thrilled to have you here today. We really greatly appreciate you being part of our program. So you made it clear that burning fossil fuels, fossil gas inside of our buildings raises some public health concerns as well, and some environmental justice issues. Can you talk a little bit about public health issues and equity issues that has helped to drive your strategy? Is mainly building electrification? That's your main strategy. Talk about equity and public health as a driver.
Well, look, that's a really great question. We got contacted by the hospital system in the Bronx in New York. The Bronx it contains the poorest congressional district in the United States. Just the most amount of poverty in a congressional district. It's between there and somewhere in Mississippi. They go back and forth. But the Bronx is in one of the wealthiest cities in the world. It's in New York City. And there's a lot of poverty there. There's also the highest asthma rates in America. They're in the Bronx. And the correlation there is that there's 5,000 apartment buildings that burn oil, literal oil. Truck pulls up, pumps it into the basement, into a boiler, they burn it. You guys may have some of that in your area as well. And the burning of oil for heat and for hot water, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, folks are burning oil to produce heat and hot water. The hot water is for cooking, it's for showering, right? So you need it every day. And you're running these giant oil tanks in these 100, 200 unit apartment buildings that are producing a ton of local air pollution. That air pollution is making its way from the basement into the apartments. People are breathing it in. It makes its way outside, creates smog. And that's on top of all the local traffic pollution in the Bronx. The Bronx serves as a food distribution hub in New York City. And so there's lots of 18-wheeler trucks that bring groceries and food in from all over the northeastern corridor. And we serve food from the Bronx throughout New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, all throughout the region. And so you got these giant trucks idling, you got boilers burning oil in the basements, and that is part of why the Bronx has the highest asthma rates in America. Now, that's obviously horrible for all the families who are afflicted by asthma. It is terrible during a pandemic when asthma is a comorbidity to COVID-19. It's horrible. The toll on the emergency room, the fact that you have kids with chronic asthma cycling in and out of the emergency room every week, overutilizes hospital resources for asthma and makes them unable to treat other kinds of ailments. And that creates a huge public health crisis. So the healthcare system in the Bronx actually contacted us and said, hey, Danelle, we'd actually be willing to pay you guys at BlocPower to reduce oil burning in apartment buildings. If that can reduce rates of asthma, we're willing to pay up front to keep people out of our emergency room. It's the right thing to do. It's also the financially correct thing to do from a unit economics perspective. And so, look, we think, I gave you a long drawn out example there, but we think that there's cities all across the country that are like the Bronx. If you go into the South Side of Chicago, you go into LA, there's going to be outsized public health impacts in low and moderate income communities. Quite frankly, even in affluent communities, there is an underappreciation for nitrogen dioxide from gas furnaces and stoves, carbon monoxide. There's a public health crisis, and basically it's like lead. It's like lead 50 years ago. We thought lead was great, made great lead paint, bright colors, whatever. We spread it all over the country, and then it turns out it's an incredibly horrible, terrible, terrible thing for public health. And gas ovens will be like that. Gas furnaces will be like that. As more and more data comes out on nitrogen dioxide that's being produced by burning gas in our homes, we're going to really come to regret gas furnaces and gas ovens in our home. So there's a massive public health crisis that we're now learning about. And the solution to all of that is electrifying buildings.
That's great. That's great. Again, we're all in on this at Fresh Energy, and we're really, really leaning into electrifying buildings as well. And I want to hear you talk about how does building electrification create these family-supporting jobs and grow the economic opportunities at the scale and at the pace required by the climate crisis. Can we really grow these jobs and this wealth creation opportunity at the scale of solving climate?
We have to. And we will. I've spent a lot of time, 11 years at this point, thinking about workforce development and the kinds of inputs and outputs we need in order to green buildings at scale. This was a goal of the Obama administration. When it comes to greening buildings, we didn't quite get there for a variety of reasons. Workforce was one of them, finance and where Wall Street, what their thinking was at the time was another. We also just didn't simply have enough data. Like we didn't have mobile computing and smartphones and the cloud and machine learning in the way that we do today, where we have distributed supercomputing in effect that allows us to collect enough data from our buildings to run analysis and then provide well-trained workers with a scope of work of how they can green and upgrade buildings across America. So we got 100 million buildings that we need to retrofit and upgrade, 125. And we need a massive new workforce for this. Now, some folks are calling for a civilian climate conservation corps. The president is in support. Senator Schumer is in support. Hell, I'm in support. We think that a World War II style mobilization and training of a new generation of contractors, as you know, look, contractors, great mechanical engineer, plumber, electrician, they're 55, 60 years old. They want to retire. And Junior turns out wants to be on YouTube and TikTok. Junior doesn't want to go work at his mom or his dad's plumbing company. And so when you look across America, you see this massive shortfall of highly skilled tradesmen and women who we need to deliver the sustainable infrastructure across America. So there does need to be a focus on a generational shift into the skilled trades. As a member of an underrepresented minority community, I know that there's lots of people who want work. We know there's people who are ex-offenders. All of them aren't ready to work and re-enter society, but some of them are. And they darn sure would like a job as a plumber, making 6 figures a year with healthcare, with other benefits that support a middle-class lifestyle. And I know it because we're currently training 1,500 at-risk young adults in New York City to do skilled construction work. We have some of the labor unions, we got some of the community college, we got some of the electricians. We're training 1,500 workers who've been left behind by other programs, and we're putting them to work in cutting-edge building electrification projects, which we think is a cutting-edge new industry that we're going to put them on the ground floor of. So we do think that large-scale workforce development initiatives can work because we're leading one in New York City, and we look forward to partnering with you guys and everybody else to figure out how to get this done.
I love it. Let's talk about public policy, Danelle. How about local public policy or New York State public policy or New York City public policy? What kind of policies have you found to be the most beneficial to your company and to your initiative in transitioning away from the using fossil fuels inside buildings? Especially we're going to be thinking in this room about things that Fresh Energy could copy and pursue here in Minnesota.
We believe in cold climate heat pumps, right? The new innovation on the hardware side that allows us to fully power buildings, even in the dead of winter with heat, with the electric heat that's clean, that's safe, that's healthy. We think that you can run buildings in Minnesota off of that. And it's not just us. There's lots of studies that are coming out saying that we can do so. And so the financial incentives from the government and the utility companies to move people to cold climate heat pumps are important on a building by building basis. But it's also really important to look at, hey, do you guys as utility ratepayers and taxpayers in Minnesota, do you guys want to be paying to dig holes and put in gas tunnels all over the state, gas pipelines? Or are there ways that we can use distributed energy resources like cold climate heat pumps to avoid installing a new gas pipeline in certain parts of the state because we've electrified so many buildings in that part of the state that we no longer need to put in a new gas pipeline because we brought down gas demand so far through electrification of buildings that we no longer need to expand supply. And so in DC and New York, these are non-wires alternatives or non-pipeline solutions and alternatives. And we think they're really, really important. I would also add, we like local law 97 in New York. Every apartment building owner I talk to and building owner I talk to doesn't like it. President Trump hated it. You might remember back when he was in office, somebody asked him something and he was like, well, they're banning windows in New York. They won't let you have windows on skyscrapers. And people were like, what the heck is this guy talking about? Well, I knew what he was talking about. He was complaining about the green buildings mandate that we have in New York, where giant skyscrapers and large buildings do by law have to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And that will require large skyscrapers with giant windows to do upgrades and retrofits to make their buildings more efficient so that those windows don't leak as much energy as they currently do. So we think that local law is really important, but I have an even better, simpler solution for you, which is that the city, and I was pretty skeptical of this, I'll be on the record, I thought it was dumb. They basically assigned a letter grade to buildings all over the city of New York. Like, this building has an A for energy efficiency, this building has a D. And I haven't seen anybody as fired up to do a sustainability upgrade as some of these building owners with D's and C's, because they're embarrassed. Any tenant that walks in, prospective tenant that wants to buy a lease, hey, why do you got a D grade on the front of your building lobby? Well, we're not energy efficient. Well, why the hell am I leasing from you then, right? Particularly when you're talking about millennials who really connect office space with health and are thinking about air quality as a component of the kinds of places that they want to work. And so that letter grade, you don't have to pass a law to do it. You just got to get a bunch of data on what's going on with your buildings and have your building owners submit data. And it was a really effective way to motivate real estate entities to do upgrades because, they're embarrassed when they get a bad score.
Danelle Baird, you're a great inspiration to everybody here at Fresh Energy and all our donors and our board and our employees. We are completely aligned with you, and we're going to work hard to help you realize this vision. So I thank you, Dave, for your time, and I greatly, greatly appreciate your investment.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. I got a lot of friends in Minnesota, and we're going to be in your area, so we got to talk and connect.
You come see us, okay?
So
we'll sit down. You come see us.
I look forward to that.
We'll introduce you to folks we know, and you can introduce us to folks you know. We'll make some difference together.
So this is to be continued. Thank you very much.
Wow, Danelle, thank you so much for showing us just how much work still needs to be done. It's really valuable to hear how deeply you think about these important topics and how you're changing the world with your dedication to healthier, smarter, and greener buildings. And your active commitment in centering equity to benefit all is so important to everyone here today. Throughout all of Fresh Energy's policy work, we're always raising questions like, who will benefit from this? Who will be negatively impacted? What will be lost? The answers aren't easy, and we need to rethink our approach to this energy transition. But that's what makes us and the policy work we're doing even stronger. Your support also makes Fresh Energy stronger. If you haven't done so already, I hope you'll take the time to make a gift at whatever level is meaningful to you right now. There's no time to wait. Our climate crisis is more urgent than ever. It's here right now. So thank you to everyone who has made a donation this morning. We are grateful for your support of Fresh Energy. Every dollar makes an impact, and your contributions are an investment to ensure a path forward as we work to eliminate fossil fuel emissions and power our world with clean, carbon-free energy. And we can't forget that powering our communities with clean energy is the greatest economic and job creation opportunity of all time. As we wrap this morning, I'm so inspired to see the enthusiastic commitment to our clean energy future by your attendance and generous gifts. I know that these are uncertain times, but Fresh Energy is here for us to build a bright future together. Thank you again for attending our 2021 Benefit Breakfast. Bye-bye.